Welcome to Booked All Night Season 2. Each week, Jess, Katie, and Maggie launch into new worlds, discover amazing characters, and bring you the best bookish discussions under the stars. We're a cozy little corner of the internet, so be sure to leave a comment and join the polls after each episode. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Alright, my little Libranauts, grab a seat, grab a book, and join us as we explore some new pages. So, we read chapters 21 through 30 this last week. And
yes, we did.
Somewhere in here we skipped a week because of Halloween, which dates how far back we record these episodes before I put them out. And like, as you've said before, like the chapters are so short and you can just eat them up, and they always end in a really great place to be like, oh, well, obviously I have to read the next one. And I can tell you, when I first read through Heartless Hunter, like when I had the arc of it, I read most of it in like 2 days because of that reason. And so when we do these 10 chapter blocks and like I read them over the weekend, I'm like, right. Shh.
Yeah. I mean, you know me, I read them this morning at work. So it was so quick.
They are though. Like I love it. And part of what bothers me for just format wise for the podcast is that I do stop at 10 so that I don't go forward, because we had that issue with Death at Morning House. And so I'm like, right, that happened. But this has been really fun for me to reread. So we pick up in chapter 21, and Rune has left Gideon's fitting, the measuring of her, thinking that she's fooled him, and she's like, ha ha ha, I'm so smart. Now I have the information that I need. Blah, ha 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 ha. And then the very following chapter, Gideon is like, ha ha ha, I'm so smart. I have fooled Rune with false information.
I saw that, and I literally almost texted you at like 7 a.m. and was just like, I caught it! Because that's what I was saying. Like, I think he gave her a false, and he outright says it. He's like, I gave Rune Winters a false location.
Yes.
And I was just like, ah!
Aha!
And we discussed this, I think, off recording last time, but we were gonna like do a voice recording of our reactions, and I almost did one, and then I was just like, but it would be like a 3-second like, oh my gosh, he gave her the wrong location. But then I heard people coming to work, and I was just like, I shouldn't do this.
I have my headcanon now for this little voice memo of yours is like you just waking up and like just kind of reading a chapter to kind of wake up in the morning, and your hair's all frizzed out and you've got like rollers in your hair and like a little toothpaste on your chin because you just like left it there. And the voice memo is just, ha ha, and you're completely disheveled. I knew it.
So, no, because I was at work. So I had been up for a little bit, but I am always disheveled whether I'm at home or at work. So
same. I'm rocking that swamp witch vibe right now. That is my I identify as a swamp witch, and it's so good. So then Gideon has this conversation with Harrow, and there's a lot of background and world building that happens in it, but there's also a couple really weird quotes, because Harrow is just like, yeah, well, how close did you look at her? And she was down to her skivvies for the measurement, right? She's just standing there in her underwear getting measured. And Gideon's like, she was in her underwear. There were no obvious casting scars. It was dim light, but the casting scars, as we know, are like silver and very reflective, and they would have stood out even in that dim light. And Harrow outright says, you need to get her good and naked, because the Crimson Moth is not going to have casting scars where anyone can see them. And
I disagree with that, though. And the only reason I disagree with that is because you would think that the Crimson Moth was this witch who was pretty prevalent in the time of the witch queens. So it wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, let me just cut under my boob and, no one will see it. And if you're casting as many spells as she is, there's only so many places you can reach.
Yeah.
Like the bra hook, that's a little bit hard to not hard to cut, but they were doing intricate designs on themselves.
They were. I did love that detail too. And I gotta tell you, if it was under the bra, my bra shanks me in the tit all the time. I would just be constantly casting all these spells as this thing keeps coming out and just stabbing me in my right boob. It's always my right boob. It's very weird.
It's never
the left boob. The left boob's well behaved. But no, I agree with that. That their interpretation of who the moth is, she would be covered in these scars. She, at the very least, if she was trying to keep them hidden, she'd be running out of space with how much crap she's given them.
And also, if she's doing these on the fly, like, how easy is it for her to get under her clothes to cut somewhere where no one's going to see it? If you're doing it on the fly, yeah, you're going to, cut your arm, cut your leg,
palm,
cut,
a finger,
your palm,
yeah.
Right? So I think, of course, Harrow's got to be up to something, because, like, why would you say she's in her bra and panties? That's not good enough. You need to get her completely naked. Like, she's cutting the inside of her
yeah.
like,
her unit. I mean,
she's doing that.
She's not cutting it, but that is where she's getting her blood from.
Right. But it just seems so obvious that Harrow is like up to something, because there's no way that you can just think the Crimson Moth is just keeping it, keeping her areas that she cut to be hidden by her bra and panties.
Yeah. I think another thing in the same scene, a lot of the justification for Harrow's hatred is that she was literally owned by a witch prior to the rebellion, and she has lost one of her ears because a friend of that witch cut her ear off for, I believe it's implied that it was for a spell. But I was like, yeah, okay, this person was probably tortured and had a lot of their blood taken, which sounds against their will. And I can see where you would be like, no, you need to make sure there are absolutely none. If you couldn't see her whole body, then it could be hidden. But I can't speak to the rest of that.
Yeah, and again, we find out, though, that Harrow doesn't know if that witch that enslaved her is dead or alive.
Yes.
And Gideon brings that up. He's just like, wouldn't you, like, I don't think he says it to her, but he says it to himself, like, who wouldn't want to know if the witch that harmed them or owned them or made them did horrible things to them is dead or not, especially when you're in the Blood Guard, especially when you're in the rebellion and the new regime.
Yeah, the new republic. It specifically, they call it purging, right? It's where they hang them upside down, they slit their throats, and they drain them of all their blood, because hanging a witch or burning a witch is just not enough.
Yep.
And I agree. Like, wouldn't you want to know? Wouldn't Harrow be on a quest of her own to find this person and, at the very least, kill her herself? And just make sure that she's dead or far, far away, and just constantly be on alert for this person possibly coming back into her life.
I mean, at bare minimum, just to find out if she fled or if she's dead, and go from there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, and we're going to get into this, but also, like, I feel the same for Gideon, and that's another one of my theories.
So, Gideon also has weird lines here. I did not write them down, though. But he's also on the, well, I guess I have to see her naked train, which is weird. But,
yeah.
Like, I don't want to say I understand, But I think in terms of Gideon's trauma, because that is also revealed in more detail here, right? We already know that he was in an abusive relationship with Cressida. That's not been a secret. But we get a little more details about that in this 10-chapter burst. And
Yes.
yeah, and so, you know, if you went through all of that and you really wanted to make sure this person was not a witch, yeah, I think I'd be on that page with you to be like, I want to make sure that you are not dangerous. You hang out with my brother all the time. Also, I have some special feelings. Also, you might be a witch. Like, I get it.
Right.
But it's still a real creepy thing to hear a guy be like, well, you have to get her good and naked. And you have to look at her in her entirety. And there's even later on when, well, and we'll obviously jump right into this spot, when Rune goes to the mine and she falls into the trap and Gideon grabs her. And they have this whole fight that I do want to talk about because that was like one of my favorite scenes in my first read through. But his comment on that is if they had gone further, he would know whether or not it was Rune because he would know how she would feel beneath him.
I mean, it depends also. Like, I mean, if you're just kind of together once or twice, maybe not. But if you're courting each other for a while, then absolutely.
Yeah. I know. I memorized everyone I've ever slept with and would know them. In like, but it's also weird.
But yeah, I was just going to say, but then again, there's probably, especially in the upper class, many females and males who have the same body type as Rune, or, you know, the same like weight and feel of it. So who knows, you know, because I know everyone's different and weights are different, especially depending on height and all that stuff. But I mean, how can you fully know? Yeah. Because again, you're going to get people who are similar builds, and you can't know how they're going to feel underneath it. Like every single one of them, how they're going to feel underneath it.
And like, I'm going to bring this up later in a discussion. If producer Rob could put down the note about knowing how bodies feel beneath Gideon, I'm going to bring this up much later, unfortunately. But I would like to be reminded to bring it up.
Tisk tisk, death at Morning House.
Sorry, but I would. I would just like to be reminded. It's important. Thank you, producer Rob. So yeah, so this section, she falls into the trap. She goes into the mine, and she looks down into like the dark hole after getting past Lila Creed, who is distracted by the horse, which is, you know, good luck for Rune. And she looks down the hole and she's like, I'll just go down and look around. Like, famous last words. You know, like, it just, you know something's down there. She even notes that something is down there, but she's like, it might be Seraphine, so I should go down there. And then Rune and Gideon fight, and then everything goes dark, and she hides under the water, and she's holding her breath, and she's like, well, he's got to be gone, because I don't see the light anymore from his torch. And she pulls herself up, and Gideon's there.
Which means, Jess, she is wet and she has a pulse.
I know. Oh, things I'm never gonna live down. At least once a season, we're gonna have an episode that just says she's wet and she has a pulse. Oh, god damn it. But yes. So, Rune is very wet, and she's being grabbed by Gideon, and they have another fight, and she stabs him, and uses his blood to cast Deadlock. And
I love it.
So this whole sequence here, right? Because last week you had brought up that, you know, like, Rune doesn't really seem like she could be the Crimson Moth, not just because the persona that she portrays to everybody else, but because she only uses her menstrual blood and it's usually dried and it's not fresh. You know, she's really not casting these very powerful spells. So how is she actually going about getting around all of these people? And we see that here, where she does sneak around. She does have the spell that kind of moves people's attention away from her. But she fights. She holds her breath underwater. She gets up. She's very quick on her feet. Like, she reacts very quickly to everything that's put in front of her. And she does get out of that situation and very quickly draws that symbol that she's only practiced a few times before passing out and locks them inside. And there's, between that information about Rune as a character and the information about how Madzik, what kind of word? Between that and how magic should work, I really liked that, because this is the first time that Rune has used fresh blood. And everything in her as she casts, she's like, wow, this feels really great. You know, it does.
And I just want to comment on that scene about when she uses her magic, what she feels. I absolutely love it. Like, when she's casting in the university, when they're in Verity's room, and she's passing out, and she says, like, she hears, like, what is it? The ocean roaring in her ears, and she's getting the migraine, and she can taste the salt on her tongue and everything. And she feels like she's drowning and being, like, swept under because she's not using the fresh blood. Her magic is weak. And then in this, it's basically the same thing, except she feels like she's in a boat in the middle of the sea going along with the wind. It just captures, I think, beautifully how magic feels to a witch and how you know it's working and how you know how powerful it is. And then she says, wow, fresh blood is lit.
Yeah. She, like, gets a little high off of it. It's kind of nice. But I also love that, because it feels like it's unique to Rune.
To Rune, yeah.
And because as you listen to Gideon talk about the magic, he's always talking about this copper scent, because he's only ever really been around the witch queens when they're casting. And so that scent is just in his brain. He's like, it's copper. It smells like blood everywhere. Like, I can never get that scent out of my nose. And Rune's is unique to her. It's the Winter Sea House. It's she's on the coastline where she lives. It's her background.
Right, and she does taste copper.
Yes,
she does, but especially because she lives at the house that's called Winter Sea House, and she lives right off the coastline. Yes, I would really like to see another witch's perspective on their magic when they use it, to see if it is different for every witch. I'm sure it is, but I would just really just like that confirmation.
If you don't get that confirmation, there's always fan fiction.
Yeah, that's true.
And then going off of Rune's character, where we see her really quick shifting and reacting to things and making sure all these loose ends are tied up. After she escapes the mine, she goes to the Creed's masked ball, and she gossips a little. She'd already gossiped at a luncheon, and she gossips just a little bit more when she gets there. And by the time Gideon shows up, people are like, oh, did tonight's operation go smoothly? And he's like, what? And she's like, oh, yeah, I told like 24 people at a luncheon earlier today. Was I not supposed to?
I literally laughed out loud at that, because I was just like, I love these games, because Gideon goes there to arrest her. For treason. For treason. And, if not, he was like, I'm going to make sure she's not a witch. And even if she isn't a witch, I'm still going to arrest her because she's in league with the Crimson Moth. And he gets there and she's just like, oh, yeah, I totally told everyone. And it's just like, oh my goodness. I just like, he gets one up, she gets one up. And it's just, I love that. I don't want to say like a perfect match, but it's just, I love this little game of back and forth, and
like
how they think about it.
The tug of war between them is done really well. So it's not like, okay, somebody is overpowering and somebody's coming up and then we switch to the other one. Like, they are just trading them off. That little flag in the middle is just like, Rune, Gideon, Rune, Gideon, Rune, Gideon. It's just moving little bits.
It's a very long volley.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ugh. And then...
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's great. Like, that's why I was really excited for you to get to this, because I knew it was coming up, because you were like, I don't understand how she's giving them all the slip. Like, she clearly isn't powerful. And then, like, her magic might not be, but Rune as herself, as a split-second tactician, is really smart. And I love those chapters. So I'm glad that we're here.
Except when it comes to boys, or at least Alex.
No, I have a quote. I have a quote for Alex, right? Because when she gets to the party and she sees him and she's like, oh, good, there's Alex. Seeing him was like a drowning woman sighting a buoy. She wanted to throw herself in his direction, loop her arms around his neck, and hold on for dear life. She did none of these things. Like, okay, you feel like you're drowning and then you see Alex and he's this whole big thing of comfort. He puts his jacket around you and you're like, oh, it's warm. But also he's doing it to cover up the blood that is coming through your glove because you weren't thinking, hey, I got shot. Maybe I should like wrap that up or something.
She did though, and it bled through.
Like, not very well.
No, she had the bandages in her satchel on her horse, and then she used the glove to kind of
cover up the bandage.
Yeah, but she also didn't know how deep it was and if it was still how long it was going to bleed for. But yeah, I mean, she did try. Yeah. I will give her that.
So there is this moment. There have been other intimate, tender moments, not sexual, but intimate, tender moments between her and Alex. And I just kind of want to be like, how do you not see this?
Right. It's so hard to know. Like, it's so hard to root for one or the other, because on one hand, like, you want Gideon and Rune, and on the other hand, you want Alex and Rune. And it's not like they can be a threesome because the two of them are brothers.
Be the weirdest polyamorous couple.
Right. And I'm sure in the history of the sexual relationships that may have been done before, but you don't ever want to assume that two brothers would be okay with that.
Right. So then this contrast between Gideon and Alex. On one, like, you're right. On one hand, I'm like, yes, Gideon and Rune. Gideon wants to kill her. But Alex really wants to control her. Every time he comes in, he's like, you should come away with me. I'm not helping you unless you come away with me and go over here. And then you find out in this section that he's not just going away for like a month. He's going away permanently, and he wants to take Rune away permanently. And when they get into the office, he like grabs her around and like confronts her very aggressively. And he's like, you can't do this. You can't keep doing this. What the hell? And even in the carriage ride home, when Verity lets it slip that they have the list of suitors, he's like, what the hell? Like, you can't be doing that. And it was very territorial.
Yes. And at this point, I was just like, oh, the nice guy persona is slipping. However, it's also like, you've had feelings for people before. You know how jealous you can get. And so, like, I get that. But I also get that he really does care about her. Maybe not in the best way, because he does want her to come away with him and everything. But he makes a good point. He's like, you can't save everyone. And say you did. Say you saved every single witch. Then what? And
then she's like, well, then I will die. That's how it's going to go, because I deserve to.
But he also was like, if you come with me to the mainland, like, you could see operas with, that aren't, political for the New Republic. Like, you can watch the operas you loved and you loved watching. You can go see concerts. You can go do this. You can live the life that you wanted to live and that you were living before all of this. Like, you can be you again. So I get where he's coming from. because he doesn't want her to die. He doesn't want her to get caught. He just wants her to be safe and happy.
She actually has some really good returns on that particular conversation when he's like, I want you to come away with me and be happy and go see things that are safe. And she comments like, not everybody gets to do that. Not everybody gets a happy ending. And it's very much her responsibility. She doesn't want to leave because she's like, I can't in good conscience go and enjoy myself knowing that these people are being hunted and that I could help them.
Right.
And then the other part is that she feels that she deserves to die because she turned her grandmother in,
right,
which was the plan that they both had to save her skin. And she's like reliving it where she's saying, you know, when they put her up there, she should have gotten on the stage and yelled at everybody and gone down with her grandmother. And she regrets not doing that. And that's not something that Alex has to, like, Alex has his own trauma, everybody does, but Alex doesn't have that trauma, and he's trying to subvert her from really dealing with it.
Right. And I mean, she doesn't say this to him, but she thinks it. She's just like, yeah, I would love to go see an opera that I've the type of operas that I've enjoyed, before, but the person I'm discussing them with isn't going to be my grandmother. And even though it's Alex, who's like an option I'd have if I can't have my grandmom, he's still not my grandma.
Yeah.
And so you're right. Like, but I'm just saying, Alex, I think, is coming from a place of concern and love and wanting to save someone he loves, because we find out how his mom, how his dad, and how his little sister died.
Yeah. And
I feel like he's trying to save someone that he loves because he couldn't save the others.
And
and I get that.
Yeah, and that shared trauma, though, that was...
Yeah, and I mean, he's doing it in a way that does seem controlling and manipulative and wrong, but I don't think his intentions are bad. I don't think he's trying to control Rune just to control her.
Yeah. I think his attitude is bad. I don't think his intentions are bad.
Right. And I mean, his attitude is like, I have a crush and you're talking about a list of suitors who aren't me, and, so I guess it stings.
Wah, love me, wah. Like, I get it, but at the same time, knock it off. Like, yeah. I'm almost 40. I got no patience for this. Absolutely not. Oh, man. I have notes in here that I can't talk to you about, and I have to do voice memos about. So they're planning in the carriage a way to get Truth Teller onto Gideon. And she's like, well, I can slip him like wine or something. And they're like, well, that already didn't work. We know that he doesn't drink. What are you going to do? Like, put it on a water glass? And, it'll be very weird to do that. So they plan to get him a jacket, and she's going to put it inside the lining of the jacket, which I think is very smart. Mm-hmm. And
yes, that's exactly what I was thinking when they were talking about that. And I was like, why don't you get the jacket and just cut out the lining?
And Alex is like,
stitch back up.
Alex is very clearly torn here because he's like, this is information that you need, but this is my brother. And you are kind of magically slipping him date rape drugs. And I'm not comfortable with that, knowing what I know about his relationship with the youngest of the Witch Queens. Mm-hmm. And then after this scene, we get that, right? We have a brief flashback to when Gideon was at his lowest and he met the commander. Right, he was high out of his mind on laudanum, and he had a really heavy drinking problem, and he kept going out, purposely getting into fights, and then going back, because Cressida had told him, like, I'll just kill your family if you ever leave me, and so the line he uses specifically, he's like, and I would crawl back into her bed like the insect that I am. I'm like, oh, wow, you feel very low about yourself, but that's understandable, given the history that I know. And the commander is like, when you're ready to not take punches and to hit back, come look me up. And that's how Gideon joins the Blood Guard. And then I'm going to skip over a part so I can talk about Gideon's trauma, because I think it's really important.
Well, can I just say,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been thinking about this all day, I think the trauma that you're about to spill happens when Gideon shows up at Rune's
Mm-hmm.
house. And the way that they describe how he's waiting for her, and I'm going to try to connect this to every book we can if I can, but I'm telling you, Gideon is based off of Jack Dawson from Titanic. And I don't know if it's she was watching Titanic while reading this, or she just had this image of him, because the tan pants and the rolled up sleeves and his back is to her and he turns around. I was just like, that's Jack Dawson. That is Jack Dawson.
All I could think was, put this kid in some concert blacks and roll his sleeves up and he's just a sexy band kid. Like...
But I'm saying the scene where he's like, I'll take you to a real party, and they meet on the stairs, and then this, I'm just like, Gideon is Jack Dawson.
Yep.
Like, I'm willing to bet that if you ask the author who Gideon is based off of, she would say, I had this whole Titanic obsession.
It's like, it was my white noise. I just put it on in the background and wrote stuff, and yeah, that's who they are. And I would believe that, to be honest. Especially like the fashion of it, yes. Rune is always described in like these tight bodice things with like those huge bustles in the butt, and her hair is,
and she's got like a reddish hair, like the reddish type hair.
So yeah. I can absolutely see that. So
Rune, Rose, hello,
Gideon, Jack Dawson, the same sound.
I'm just throwing it out there, because if there's any connection to Titanic that I can find, I will find it. I will. But that's my theory.
That's fair. So they have a walk in the garden, and I will jump back to the discussion in the garden, but they get into an argument, and Gideon finally at the end is like, if I were really courting her, I would let her know this. So he very carefully picks and chooses the little bits to tell her about his relationship with Cressida. And so you learn a lot of stuff. One that we knew, right? It started off with, at least from Gideon, good intentions. That he met her when he was younger, they were hiring his parents, and he's like, you're pretty. And she's like, you're pretty. Like, we're pretty together.
It was a mutual attraction.
Yeah. And then it started to get twisted when the rest of the witch queens were using the blood from his parents to cast spells. And so the parents were coming home, and they were like, paranoid about things and accusing their children of stuff and yelling at Tess, who was Alex and Gideon's younger sister. And, eventually they passed, and all he had left was his sister. And he wanted to leave because at this point Cressida was like making him wait on them, right, at the garden parties. She was constantly threatening him, like, if you leave me, bad things will happen. At one point, she branded him. She branded him with a curse and said, I will activate it if you ever leave me. And then there is a part where she locks his sister in a room, and she's sick, and she just keeps calling out, and he winds up attacking her and, like, trying to choke her out, but gets arrested by the guard, and by the time he gets out of jail, his sister has passed.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, that's a lot. And I can see why your reaction to witches was they're all evil, because the ones that you have interacted with were like, whoo, up there. And you find out that they were casting arcana magic. So we come back to the magic system, and we have the mirages, then Minora, Majora, and Arcana, based off tarot cards. And so I really liked that. It's simple. It's something we can already put into the world. I think most, especially fantasy readers, already kind of have this base knowledge there. And you learn that like, not only is this magic outlawed, it also requires a lot of blood, and the blood is not given willingly.
And we also learn that the more they use, the more corrupt they get, and the more out of, I don't want to say like out of hand they get, but they don't act like themselves. It corrupts them. It makes them do weird things. And I think what is telling is that Gideon says that because they were using his mom to do all this, she was becoming corrupted. And Rune says, well, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's the people who are casting who get corrupted. And so it's like, and not that this is a theory, but this is not like a solid theory, but it's like, what if his mom was participating in that, and that's how she got corrupted? Maybe she was some sort of witch, or freely gave her blood or something, and it corrupted her because of that. Who knows?
Yeah, I genuinely don't remember, so I don't have to cover my face for this particular theory.
But I would be interested. It's not like I'm hoping or I'm calling it or anything. I'm just interested in knowing more about his mom, because he thinks she got corrupted from that. But as we know, as from Rune and Verity, it's the casters who get corrupted.
Yeah.
Not the people they take it out on.
I think that definitely sets up to have a twist later on to that tale. And one thing that I would say is a running theme throughout Heartless Hunter is that my thought train has left the station. Oh, one theme that definitely runs through the book is the idea that every story has two sides. We learn about the rebellion from Rune's side and how dangerous it was for her, and we learn about the rebellion from Gideon's side. And so we learn about the terror that happened to both sides of this, so that we understand that like neither of the side here is 100% in the right. One was definitely ignoring things and profiting from it, and one was not
ignoring other things and profiting from that. And I think you skipped this for a reason, but I will bring it up because this is part of the conversation in the garden, is that Gideon is just like, oh yeah, I'm from a poor town, but I won't even tell you where I'm from before that because it's even poorer.
Yes.
And, we rose up because, we wanted a better life. And Rune says, well, the poor are still poor under the new republic. So they did absolutely nothing to help the poor. And that's what they were running on. The whole, we'll make the poor rich.
Oh yeah, because that argument ends with one of us thinks ourselves too good for the other, but it's not me. Which Rune says to Gideon, which I really did like. But
I also like that he says, your type of people don't marry my type of people.
Yeah.
And she basically says, well, your type of people only marry us for one reason. And basically that's for our money.
Yeah.
To move up. And I thought that was so interesting because it's true. Like, I mean,
they both have a reputation.
Right. But if you think about it just in any setting in history, really, like, wealthy people don't marry poor people because they want to keep their wealth. They want to keep adding to it. But poor people will marry rich people because it means they get to be rich too. Yep.
And rich people also marry richer people to add to the wealth. So, like, yeah, it's historically accurate.
Yeah.
I found the quote, but it's...
Or you marry for love.
Yeah. Or you marry for love, and then your parents are like, ugh, a love match. So she tries to politely say that Old Town is quaint, right? And he's like, quaint is the word polite people use when they don't want to be insulting. And she's like, are you so incredibly determined to misunderstand me? Which is this moment of like, yeah, you're starting a fight, dude. Like, what is your problem? And his little rant here is it quaint that the residents of Old Town scraped their pennies together to keep the lights on? Quaint that parents spend half the year starving so their children don't have to, when penitent children beg in Old Town streets, or the old and infirm freeze to death in their beds because they can't afford to heat their apartments. Yeah, okay, right? Like, I'd be mad about that as well. And Rune responds with, I'm not sure why you're angry at me. If penitent children are begging in the street, it's the Republic you should blame. The good commander made their families outcasts for aiding witches. Or don't you remember that the commander promised us a better world, one where no one lives in squalor? And I like this moment because Rune is genuinely dropping her, ha 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 ha, my hair is so fluffy persona to outright call him out. Which she has wanted to do for, not just to Gideon specifically, but to the whole regime, to just call them out, be like, you promised to make things better. And I'm sensing a theme here in America politically lining up with that, where you promised to make things better, and it's worse.
Right. I also think, my thought train just left the station.
Choo choo.
But But I also think that she is dropping that, but she's literally showing her real feelings about the Republic, who she's supposed to, support and abide by, and who's honoring her next week at the supper and all this stuff. And she's literally saying they're also not good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've been under two hierarchies that haven't done anything for anyone other than the wealthy.
Yep. I really love that she does, like, we're around the midway point here. I think this is a really great place to be having this break in character, at least I don't want to say break in character, because it's not really a break in Rune's character. It is definitely her letting her guard down and this change and being like, I've been on the defensive, right? I'm going around in the shadows and I'm helping witches this way, and I am being a silent ally to everybody else, and I'm tired of it. And so this point for her to be like, hey, shut up. I want to say other things, but then I have to blurb it out later, and I just don't feel like doing that.
Hey, you're mad at the wrong people. You can be mad at the witches who did what they did to you, but you can also be mad at the people who promised a better future and never delivered.
Yeah. Especially because these people are the reason that these other people are living in poverty now. They had the penitent, which are the people who were allies and children of witches that didn't report them. And so they take everything away from them. They're not allowed to have money. They're not allowed to have housing. Like, they purposely make them homeless. And then forbid them from asking for aid and from other people giving them aid. So it's like, yeah, what did you expect would happen with this kind of policy?
Right.
Like, you didn't just come for witches, you came for their friends and their family and their neighbors, and that's literally the rest of us. So why are you mad at me? I didn't do it.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It's very much like, well, I didn't vote for you. Kind of like witches and pawns distributing swords is not a system of government. But I'm glad that she has that. And I remember the first time I read it, I was like, yeah, yell at him. Like, and that's...
Get your frustrations
out.
Yeah,
get it. And that's ultimately what leads Gideon to be like, here's my trauma dump.
Right.
But after that, he's like, well, I'm glad I got that out. You want to go for a swim? He's like, let's turn the page. Also, do you want to get naked and go for a swim?
While he was trauma dumping, and this is what I was texting you about. Here comes the theory. He talked about how he killed the two witches. He saw to their deaths, and then he went to to go after Cressida, and Alex stopped him because Alex had already gotten to her, so he didn't have to do it. No body, no death. Because Alex stopped him from going after Cressida because he had already, in quotes, done the job.
That is a theory, yes.
It is a theory.
It is a theory.
And you were not ready for your book, and I even told you.
I was not ready to hold up my face-blocking book. That is a theory that you can have about the events of this book.
And I don't know, like I said in my text, I don't know if I had brought it up last podcast, but no body, no death. No body, no confirmation of death. Okay? We don't see it. Therefore, she could still be alive. And I have my theories about that too. They're far-fetched, so I won't get into them. But yes, that is my theory. I don't know why Alex would allow her to escape or whatever, but yes, that is my theory.
A solid theory.
A very solid theory.
A theory. A theory. And I agree on the, like, no body, no crime, right? Like, we didn't see this. It was never, like, dragged through the streets. So there's nothing canonically at this point to say that they are all dead.
Right.
And there were a lot of witches who did manage to escape during the rebellion, like the one that harmed Harrow. So it's a good theory to have. So I want to actually make note of, like, some of the world building that we got in this section as we hit, like, I don't know, like our 1 hour mark around where we are. This was a juicy set of 10 chapters. So when Gideon and Harrow go into the library that used to be splendid, right? Gideon tells us what it looked like before. There were all these statues of the ancients, so we have a little bit of world building and religion there, as they tell us that there was, like, amity and truth and these other things to aspire to, along with statues of famous witches and witches that had, you know, created new magics and things. There were all these books on spells and history and magic, and there was the Hope Tree, the tree in the center of the library that spanned, like, 4 stories. So this library sounds beautiful. And then Gideon tells us that it's all destroyed. And I wanted to rage, because I'm just like, you destroyed this beautiful library, and why? But I mean, like, I understand why, because you're rebelling, but at the same time, Library of Alexandria drama.
Right.
Like, how dare you destroy this library?
Could have just taken all the spell books and burned them.
Well, one, you could have taken all of that. Why did you have to burn down the tree? The tree wasn't magical, and it was called the Hope Tree. Right. Why would you destroy the Hope Tree?
Right. I mean, if you're really pissed off at the library, like I said, just take the witchy books and just get rid of them.
Right? Like, that's all you had to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't imagine that every single book in that library was a spell book or other thing, but they destroyed every single one.
They said it was filled with, like, history books and all that stuff, yeah. Yeah, very disappointing.
Yeah.
Very traumatic.
It was. It made me sad.
Yeah.
And you know me, I don't really cry much when I'm reading, but, like, my library. like the world building in this section was really great. We get the little bit of the beauty of the land before the rebellion, because each time we've gone to a setting, we kind of get that. When we went to the opera house in the beginning, Rune is the one that notes where all of these beautiful statues were, all of the artwork and things, and they're gone now. Even the art itself is gone now, because now all they watch are these propaganda operas. And all we have really seen is destruction from the New Republic. And we also got world building as it pertained to the magic. We learned a little more about the requirements, not necessarily the rules, but the sacrifice involved with the magic, right? So for Mirage, Minora, and Majora, it tends to come from the willing. It comes from yourself or someone who is like, yes, you can use my blood for this more powerful spell. And then we also learned about the Arcana magic, which doesn't sound like it was ever used for something good. That it was always for some nefarious purpose. The blood required for it is from someone who is not willing. And it just, like, it sounds evil. And if that's your only knowledge of magic, yeah, I wouldn't like it either. We also got more sense of Rune's magic and how that feels.
Yes.
And how it also feels and smells to someone who is not magical, right? So, like, they look out the window, Gideon and Lila look out the window after they've been locked in, and they see her casting mark, and her casting mark is a little red moth. And that's why she's called the Crimson Moth, because it's a little red moth. And, like, each one of them kind of has a general coppery scent to people that are not magical, but to people who are magical, they're like, oh, I can... this is the smell and the taste, and this is how it affects the rest of my senses. And I really just loved the information that we get here.
But even then, we also realize that each witch has their own they have a specific smell to their magic, because Alex notes that Gideon is really good at smelling magic. He can smell it, and he knows with the smell which witch it belongs to, which witch is which. So
which is which.
So even if you're not magical, you can tell when magic is being used and that it's done by a different caster than another spell that you may have noted before.
Yeah, I like that palpable element to it. A lot of times when we get fantasy elements, it's like, oh, here goes, like, my magic. And unless it's something elemental, people that aren't magical don't tend to feel it. So when they're like, I, used my telekinesis to move something across the room, nobody notices that anything's happening. But here, something gets cast and people are like, oh, I feel it. Like, your magic is on my skin, and I don't like it, or I do like it. Who knows? Some people might have a kink. You never know. We don't shame on this podcast.
I mean, the smell could be nice. It could be a nice, fresh, lemony scent. You don't know.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, we have not seen other magic users. And so we don't know what other people's magic feels like.
Right.
The only person that really does is Gideon, because of the times that Cressida cast magic on him to punish him.
Also Verity, because she was around when her sisters practiced their magic. And she had two of them. So she would probably be able to tell which one casted what. Yeah.
I don't think, at least up to this point, we don't really know if Verity's sisters ever cast anything on her.
No, but we know that she was there for when they were practicing and studying, because that's how she helps Rune. Because she's never done magic herself, but because she was there in the room with her sisters, she can help, because she studied technically with them. She just couldn't do it.
It's like my understanding of microbiology, because I help my sister study. But nobody else should ask me for anything. It's not a very good understanding of microbiology. It's just sort of an understanding.
You can give us an overview.
It is the biology of the microscopic world.
I just meant in general.
Overview.
I didn't mean now. I just mean you could give us an overview with your knowledge.
There are cells, and they're involved, and they're very small.
Welcome to Book All Night, where we discuss books and science.
Yes, science. Ooh, powerhouse of the cell. That's a wrap on this episode of Booked All Night. We'd love for you to be a part of the conversation, so don't forget to rate the show, drop a comment, and share your thoughts in the episode poll. And remember, subscribing means you'll never miss an episode or interview as we launch into more amazing stories together. Booked All Night is produced by Rob Cook and his cats. So when you share your favorite episode, be sure to tag us at BookedAllNightPod on Threads, Instagram, and Facebook, and say hi to our guy in the sound booth. For more information, like reading schedules and dates on our upcoming interviews, check out the link in the show notes. That's link.bio/bookedallnight. lnk.bio/bookedallnight, for those of you who don't check the show notes. Until next time, my little Libernauts, this is Jessica Mary, Kaylee, Magdalene Ann, and producer Rob signing off and reminding you to stay booked all night.